I am back on the Fury. Last weekend I installed the 318, and so today my plan is to see what it's going to take to get the 42 RH or A500 4-speed with lockout transmission. This is the one that was in the Barracuda that I put in last year. I think it's from like a 91 Dakota that had a 318 in it. So this transmission I know mounts to this engine well and drives well, and I'm hoping that this will just go right in, as this used to be a big block. Used to have a TorqueFlite 727 in here, which is the tunnel's just a lot bigger than what was in here. So in the Barracuda, I had this motor and the 42 RH in the Barracuda with no tunnel modifications. So I got my fingers crossed that this is just going to bolt right in, and I can get this thing running again. I mean, it took me 3 weeks to do the Barracuda tunnel modifications and stuff. So if I can do this in one day, I'll be way ahead of the game. So transmission's in the basement, so I'm going to bring it up and get it on the transmission jack and see what we got. Okay, well, that hope of it just fitting right in, and the 727 transmission, that was short-lived. It is in. It is, the dowel pins are both on and one bolt in, so the transmission is technically on the motor. But as you can see right here, we're touching. Right here, we're touching, and we're very close to my little adapter that's for the lockout. And yeah, I think that's the lockout. So, I mean, this side's fairly good, just like on the Barracuda. It was always on the driver's side. So I may drop the transmission down and just see if I can massage the data, massage the, that's what happens when you work in IT, massage the metal a little bit to give me enough room. This almost looks like it's already in that way. So I'd hate to cut up the floor and pull the interior out and do all that stuff for like a 1/2 inch, if I can get a 1/2 inch with some tools. So I'm gonna try that. Okay, so I did a little persuading with the persuader, and that worked out pretty good. I think I have enough room here now. I could probably tap that in a little bit. This was already like this, so I just kind of made it right. Oh, sorry. This was left alone, so this is kind of what I dimpled in here and here. And I think part of the issue is this has a stamp, which I believe is for a console. If it was a console car, that's where it would have mounted. I'm a little close here, so I'm gonna bring in a little here and that corner and try not to fold it. But everything on this side looks good. And if I take my level and I zero it out, and then I put it on the block, I'm 3.9. If I raise it a little, 3.8. Earlier I was 3.4. I was happy with that. It's 3.6, 3.4. Yeah, so that's where I was before. I think that'll work. So maybe it's not so bad. I'm sure I busted up the POR 15 on the inside when I did where I did the floors earlier, but the metal is easy to massage. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to mark my points again and give myself enough room, and then just kind of bolt this transmission in. Then I need to work on the cross member mount. And if you look at this thing, it is way off center. I mean, by design. So I'm not going to be able to use the Barracuda mount that I built. I'm going to have to modify the factory, but it kind of lines in pretty good. The only thing is this is a little bit closer to these cross members where the other one kind of sat here. So, and I just need to weld and cut a little bit to get that in there. So I think I might be able to get this. Oh, I'm not going to say it. Wish me luck. Okay, so third time is a charm. As you can see, I have a nice space all the way around. It's actually all the way at the top. So I think I'm sitting at 3.5 degrees, which, I mean, I wouldn't even mind a little better, but it's not worth cutting up the floor and doing all this work to get in there. So I'm calling this one good, and I'm going to start working on the modification of the factory cross member. Like I said, I think it'll go right in, but I need to modify the part that will attach to the engine mount to open it up to bring it closer to the cross member. It sits closer than the 727 did. So, okay, moving on. All right, so here's the cross member. And basically it's going to look like this. It's going to kind of come in, but I need to do some measurements and get the rock off. All right, so I used the wheel of death and basically cut out that step. Here's what it looked like. And something like that. So I now have enough room, I think. So I'm going to test fit it and see if I need to trim out more. Then basically I will extend this to however I need to get it to fit and weld it in. I just did a test fit. I couldn't use a camera because this is just so dang heavy, but this tab is interfering with the transmission mount, so I'm going to trim that off. Okay, I had to box this out, and then I had to cut off part of this mainly because the walls weren't gonna make it, and then welded this on. That other piece wasn't gonna work well anyway. So I don't know if just angling these is gonna give it enough foundation to keep it from sagging, but I'll keep an eye on it. I know my welds are horrible, but you know, I'm trying to get better. It's only one way to get better at this, and that's just to keep welding. So I'm going to go ahead and etch prime this and kind of clean it up and shoot a coat of paint on it and get that up in there. It should be ready to just kind of bolt in at this point. So While it was more work than I was hoping, it could have been way worse. So, moving on. All right, so it is a new day. I spent some time last night painting, put some etching primer on it, on the cross member, the updated, modified cross member sport. And so it's ready to go back in the car. Do one last check to make sure it is ready and possibly wrap this part of the project up. All right. So here's where I'm at. It is installed with the cross member. I don't have these on yet. So I was tightening like all 10 of these. There's on both sides and then there's 2 underneath. And I was tightening them up and I was like, probably shouldn't be tightening these because I'm probably gonna have to take these all off again. So, and sure enough, I kind of was doing this. And as you can see, maybe see here, it's really close right there. It's probably a weld. I could maybe put some washers here and kind of just raise it up a little bit and maybe it wouldn't hit. I'll give that a shot and just kind of see. Sorry you had to hear that. Okay, so I stuck some washers in here just to kind of raise it up a little bit. And that's much better. So, fixed. And if this is generally where I like to do it. Zero it out. And then put it try that again. And that is not what I was getting before. I was getting, yeah, 3.5. So there's something about when it twists sideways that it gets all cattywampus. So I'm calling that good. Sorry, pulled you off to the side there. Yeah, I'm calling this good. I'm gonna start finishing up the rest of the motor mounts. I need to run coolant lines, but I still have to put the radiator in and a fan set up. But as far as the transmission install, I'm calling this good. All right, so here's a little better shot with the transmission colostomy bag removed. Just had to basically notch and build a new bottom section just because it didn't want to mesh with this. It was more vertical, and by the time you end up cutting and modifying, it was going to be just as easy to put a new one in there. I did, box that out, and she is solid. So, yeah, I am wanting to change the rear gears on this. I've never done a rear end on these, or ever, and I haven't done a lot of differential work. So I'm kind of excited about it, but I want to change the gears on here to 355 gears, which is pretty much what the Barracuda has. And that, with this setup, with this transmission, with this engine, I think was perfect. Like, highway miles, 70 mile an hour was 2,000 RPMs, and it still had a lot of oomph when it left off the line. I think this is going to be perfect for this vehicle. A nice cruiser that you can run on the highway at 70 and not feel like you just got to stomp it to get it to go anywhere. So I do have to measure the drive shaft and get that cut. I need to do exhaust. The fuel line, I'm going to probably just stick with the the fuel line that I had for when it was a Holly Sniper. So this one had a return setup. So, and it was here. It was back at the gas tank. So I didn't have to run 2 lines. I think I'm a little better at running lines these days, but because I was just buying the stuff you could get at Advanced Auto Parts and stuff like that, and so you only got them in 6-foot sections, I think, and then. But anyway, it worked. It doesn't leak, so I just need to get another fitting here to go to the manual fuel pump, and and I do need a new sender or. Here, one of the, whatchamacallits, basically the fuel, intake. God, I'm having a senior moment. You know what I'm talking about, where it brings the fuel in. So, because I modified that one heavily to be able to have a return line, and it's all weird. So I'm just gonna buy a new one. They're not very expensive, but I think this will be running fairly soon. Yeah, so looking forward to that, and moving on.